Before we go any further, I need you to understand something very deeply. You did not simply come across this message by accident. Somehow, this message found its way to you. I know that may sound like one of those things people say because it feels comforting. But stay with me for a moment, because there is a real difference between randomly finding something and being quietly led toward it. What is happening right now, as you listen to these words, is not just some random event. It is not only the result of an algorithm. It is not simply about perfect timing. It is something much more exact than that. And somewhere beneath the noise of your day, beneath the endless stream of thoughts and responsibilities pulling at your attention, you already feel it. You sensed something the moment you saw the title. It was not exactly curiosity. It was softer than curiosity, yet heavier than it at the same time. It felt more like recognition, like reading the first line of a letter you once wrote years ago and somehow forgot even existed. A strange and peaceful familiarity, a feeling that something deep inside you already understood before your mind had the chance to catch up. Because lately you have been carrying something. Not the kind of heaviness that other people notice when they look at you. Not the kind that brings sympathy, explanations, or worried questions from others. I am talking about the kind that settles right behind your chest. Quiet, steady, and always there. The kind of weight you have carried for so long that you almost stopped seeing it as weight at all. Almost, but you still feel it. You notice it in the mornings before the day fully begins and everything starts rushing in. You notice it during those small spaces between one task and another when the distractions become softer and there is nothing left to focus on except the honest truth of where you are right now. You notice it when someone casually asks how you are doing. You smile, you say you are fine, and what you really mean is something much more complex than that one small word could ever hold. The truth, the real truth that you have not said out loud to anyone lately, is that you are tired. Not weak, not broken, not falling apart. Tired. There is a very meaningful difference between all of those things, and I need you to hear that difference clearly, because the story you have been quietly telling yourself about what this exhaustion means is not the complete story. Not even close. You have been doing the work. Maybe not perfectly, maybe with long periods of doubt woven through it, maybe with setbacks that made you seriously question how far you had actually come. Maybe with nights when old emotions returned and sat beside you much longer than you wanted them to. But you have been doing the work. You have been choosing yourself in ways that nobody applauds, in ways that nobody around you notices, in ways that never become part of the version of your story you share with other people. The moment you decided not to send that message, the morning you got yourself out of bed, even though staying there would have felt much easier. The evening you sat with something painful instead of running from it. The times you resisted reaching for your phone just to fill the silence. The moments you allowed quiet to exist without immediately filling it with noise and distractions. The choice you made again and again to keep moving forward, even when moving forward felt like walking through something thick, invisible, and endlessly difficult. Even when nobody around you could see how hard it truly was. Those choices matter deeply. They are not small. They are not meaningless. They are everything. The part of you that feels exhausted right now is not the part that is failing. It is the part that has been carrying much more than its fair share for far longer than it should have been asked to. And I want you to understand that this effort has been seen, even in the moments when it felt completely invisible. Welcome to the 4th second. I am your friend, and today I want to talk with you about what it really means when a message finds you. Not the surface version of that idea, not the version that looks beautiful under an inspirational quote placed on a clean background. The real version, the deeper version. The version that Carl Jung devoted much of his remarkable life to explaining in language the rational mind could accept without instantly rejecting it. Because Jung understood something that many people spend their whole lives resisting. He understood that the psyche, the living intelligence of your inner world, is not passive. It is not simply a storage room for memories, regrets, wounds, and conversations you replay late at night. It is active. It moves. It responds. It constantly pushes itself toward wholeness with a quiet determination that does not ask your permission before it begins. And it does not wait until you feel ready. When you are truly ready for something, not in theory but in real life, the kind of readiness that is born from genuine loss, real struggle, deep disappointment, and the conscious choice to grow instead of becoming hard, something starts to shift inside you. After life has broken you open and you decide to expand through that opening instead of closing yourself off from everything that could hurt you, the psyche begins to organize itself differently. It starts arranging things, connecting things, guiding you. It begins preparing the conditions for whatever naturally comes next in your journey. And the logical mind usually calls all of this coincidence, because coincidence feels safer and easier to manage. Coincidence allows us to stay comfortably in control. The alternative asks much more of us. The alternative quietly suggests that perhaps you are being guided, that perhaps the life trying to reach you has been reaching back toward you all along. So let me ask you something genuinely important. And before you rush to answer it, sit with it for a real moment. What have you been trying to figure out completely on your own? Because there is something very specific moving inside you right now. There is a version of your life that you have been carrying quietly in your heart for a very long time. You have not been obsessing over it in desperate ways. You have not been holding it with white knuckles. You have simply been carrying it, the way a person carries something precious and delicate when they are not fully sure whether to keep holding on or finally let it go. A version of your life where something unresolved finally finds peace. A version where what has remained suspended between you and another person, or between you and the future you can almost picture, finally settles onto firm ground. You have not given up on that vision, but lately, in your most honest moments, when the performance fades and the armor quietly falls away, you have started asking yourself harder questions. You have wondered whether continuing to hope makes you foolish. You have wondered whether protecting that private hope from disappointment is wisdom or simply a comfortable form of denial. You have questioned whether the part of you that still believes is strong or simply afraid to let go of what it has held for so long. And that question is exactly why this message reached you today. Because the answer is neither of those things. It is not foolishness. It is not traditional wisdom. It is something more meaningful and more precise than either of those words can fully explain. What you are carrying is discernment that is still growing. You are slowly learning the important difference between hope that supports your growth and attachment that quietly demands pieces of you in return. And that is one of the most life-changing lessons a person can ever learn. It rarely arrives in a clean and organized way. It rarely makes immediate sense. It comes in layers. It arrives wrapped in confusion. It brings setbacks that convince you hope was nothing more than a mistake. Then it brings moments of clarity that feel almost too fragile to trust. And right now, you are standing directly in the middle of that process. From the inside, growth almost never feels beautiful or inspiring. Most of the time, it feels like being completely stuck. It feels like standing in a doorway, unable to return to the room behind you, and yet unable to fully step into the room ahead. The room behind you is familiar, even if it caused you pain, even if you outgrew it a long time ago. You know how it works. You understand its language and rhythms. The room ahead is completely different. It is uncertain and unpredictable, yet it holds within it everything you have been saying you truly want. And the doorway itself is a very uncomfortable place to stand. The waiting is truly exhausting in ways that are difficult to explain with words. The uncertainty keeps going much longer than you ever imagined it would. Yet every single day you still remain in that doorway. You keep showing up. You keep making the effort. You keep choosing not to return to what no longer honestly matches the person you are becoming. Even though nobody is visibly rewarding that effort, at least not yet. Jung called this inner movement the transcendent function. It is the psychological process through which opposite forces inside of you slowly begin creating something completely new and beautiful. What you deeply desire and what you secretly fear. Who you once were and who you are slowly becoming. The past that you are still grieving and the future that keeps calling you forward. These opposites do not find peace because one side finally defeats the other. They do not settle because one eventually wins the argument. Instead, they create a third possibility altogether, something that neither side could have imagined on its own, something that only becomes possible because both tensions were held long enough and with enough patience and courage to transform into something greater. The transcendent function does not work according to your personal schedule or your preferred timeline. It does not appear simply because you have decided you are finally ready. It does not arrive because you have managed to understand everything beforehand. It does not politely wait until all the circumstances around you become perfect and comfortable. It appears when enough of the old structure has softened and dissolved to make genuine space for what is trying to enter your life and grow there. And that dissolving is almost always the part that people misunderstand the most while living through it. Dissolving feels like total stagnation. It feels like endless confusion with no clear direction ahead. It feels like the slow loss of certainty about things you once felt completely sure about. It feels like standing perfectly still while everyone around you seems to move confidently forward with their lives. But the dissolving is not proof that nothing is happening beneath the surface. The dissolving is not evidence that you have somehow fallen behind or taken the wrong path. The dissolving is the doorway itself, and you are already standing inside it. Which means something real and important is already taking place within you, whether you can clearly see it right now or not. The pressure you are feeling at this moment is not the pressure of something ending forever. It is the pressure of something trying to be born. You are not stuck. You are in the middle of becoming. And becoming is one of the most confusing places a person can ever live. Because you are no longer the person you used to be, but you are not yet the person you are slowly growing into. Most days you have to move through the world from that in-between place without a map, without guarantees, and without any certainty that you are doing things correctly. And I want to stay here for a moment because I think you truly need to hear this clearly. The in-between is not a mistake. The in-between is not proof that you failed somewhere along the road. It is not evidence that life has forgotten you. It is not a sign that you are somehow falling behind everyone else. The in-between is actually the work itself. It is the most important part of the entire process, and yet it receives the least recognition because from the outside, it looks like absolutely nothing is happening. People who are living in the in-between often appear completely fine to everyone around them. They go to work every day, they answer messages, they take care of their responsibilities without complaining. They show up for the people who depend on them. They laugh at the right moments during conversations. They make plans. And they continue moving through their days. And nobody around them knows. Nobody can see that beneath all of this activity, a complete internal reorganization is quietly taking place. They are rethinking everything they once believed about themselves, everything they thought they deserved, everything they believed love was supposed to feel like. Everything they accepted because they believed they had no other choice. Everything they carried simply because they had become used to carrying it without question. And they are beginning to ask themselves some difficult questions. What am I no longer willing to accept in my life? What burdens were never really mine to carry in the first place? What parts of me have been silently waiting for permission to finally exist? That reorganization is happening inside you right now. It is quiet. It is invisible to everyone around you. And it is one of the most sacred things about where you currently are in this season of your life. Now I want to talk about the other person, the one who has been on your mind lately, the one whose name still lives in a special place deep inside your chest, a place you cannot always reach freely, a place that sometimes opens without any warning. At random moments during your day, a song starts playing nearby. A certain kind of light fills the room. Someone says a word or phrase that once belonged only to the two of you, and suddenly, there they are once again in your thoughts. I want to talk about them because they are also part of this message. Not the center of it, because you are the center of it, but they are still part of this story. And what I want you to understand about them may be difficult to hear, especially if you are still in the part of this experience where the pain feels the loudest, where unanswered questions still hurt deeply, and where silence still feels sharp and heavy. They are moving through a process of their own right now, a process they did not choose, a process they cannot fully understand from inside of it, a process they do not yet have the words to properly explain to anyone. And that process is much harder than they allow people around them to see. Because beneath whatever version of life they are currently showing to the world, something much deeper is quietly happening within them. They are facing the real distance between who they have been and who the most honest version of themselves truly requires them to become. That gap does not close easily. It cannot be ignored. It cannot be distracted away no matter how hard they try. It cannot disappear through busyness, new routines, or pretending to feel differently than they actually do. It only closes through reckoning. And reckoning asks very difficult things from people who are not yet ready to face it completely. The face of that reckoning may look familiar to them. It may look like you, not because you are responsible for saving them from themselves, not because your healing depends on their awakening, not because your life should pause while they slowly figure themselves out. None of those things are true, and I need you to hear that clearly. But because you represented something genuinely real during a season of their life that was mostly built on performance, a season filled with distance, emotional control, guarded feelings, and walls that kept everyone at a careful arm's length. And the reality of what you offered them did not disappear simply because the relationship changed direction. The depth you brought into their life, the presence you carried, the genuine attention you gave, the honesty you offered without fear, those things did not vanish into nothing. They simply went underground. And underground things have a remarkable way of making themselves known sooner or later. Underground things continue growing anyway. They move toward the light whether the surface is ready to welcome them or not. I am not telling you to wait for them. I want to be absolutely clear about that because I know how easy it is to hear something like this and turn it into permission to place your entire life on hold. That is not what this means at all. What I am telling you is something much more important. The version of you that is deeply rooted in her own becoming, the version you are building right now in this exhausting and invisible in-between, in the work that nobody sees, validates, or celebrates, is not in competition with love. She is actually the condition for it. The real kind of love. The kind that does not ask you to shrink yourself for someone else's comfort. The kind that does not require you to become smaller so another person can remain comfortable in their smallness. The kind that does not force you to hold your breath while waiting for someone else to decide your worth. The kind that allows you to be fully yourself without fear, without performance, and without abandoning the truth of who you are becoming to see if you are accepted. The kind that does not demand constant self-checking and careful editing of every part of yourself. The kind that does not force you to turn yourself into something smaller and easier for other people to understand without discomfort. Real love can truly meet you only when you are standing completely inside the truth of who you really are, without apology, without pretending, and without the constant nervous noise in the background that comes from needing another person to convince you that you are worthy of being chosen and worthy of someone's stay. And you are closer to becoming that version of yourself than you have ever been before. Even if it does not seem like it right now, and maybe especially because it does not feel like it. The moments that come just before real transformation rarely look like change. They often feel like standing still. They feel like waiting for something that never arrives. They feel like silence that stretches on forever. They feel as if the universe has somehow lost your address, as if life itself has temporarily forgotten where you are. Jung understood this truth about human experience very deeply. He noticed that the biggest changes in a person's inner life rarely announce themselves in advance. They appear after long periods of tension and uncertainty. These are periods that people almost always misunderstand while they are living through them. They mistake them for failure. They call them setbacks. They believe that nothing important is happening anymore. They decide that all of their effort has been wasted, when in truth, what they are actually feeling is the necessary pressure that comes before real transformation. It is the deep work taking place under the visible surface, the final, quiet stages of preparation before something completely new can finally step into the light. A cocoon does not feel like growth from the inside. It feels tight and uncomfortable. It feels dark and confusing. It feels like being trapped inside a place that no longer matches the creature that is developing within it. And then one day, without warning, the walls begin to crack.